haven't been live.
On Real Talk with Gene Price. Upcoming on Real Talk with Gene Price.
Not go back, but turn back. I don't think you do get, because you don't go back so far. Become that warrior, that other sister. I dare everybody that's listening to your voice, that I can see the feed, that's listening to my voice. I dare each one of these sisters to get behind somebody else. We don't know what they're facing. So excited you're joining us today. Can you believe it's been 1 year that actually Real Talk with Gene Price came about? And for that, we are so excited. We have so much to celebrate. We have so much to be thankful for. And we are so glad that you're going to be a part of this celebration. At this time, listen, we want you to like, we want you to share. We also want you to comment. And we also, if you want one of our t-shirts, please, we want you to subscribe to us. SoBeItMedia.com. Just shoot us an email. We have something special in store for you, and you might be one of the people that's going to be called on to the show. So listen, you don't want to miss this. But right now, I am so excited. I'm so excited because in this 1 year anniversary, oh my goodness, we have so much to talk about because so much has happened in this year. We had the pandemic. We had so many things that came out of what people were calling the new normal. But I don't want to get ahead of myself, so I want you to stay tuned. You still have time to tell people to come on. We want you to do that. But I want to invite my first guest tonight. He's part of the team. He works wonders with Real Talk with Gene Price along with Brian. Oh my goodness, it's such a great team that I have, and I am very grateful. But I want to welcome to the show Zamar Allen. Come on out, Zamar.
Hello, everybody. It's cool to be in front of the camera instead of behind it once again.
Well, listen, I want to thank you for being on Real Talk with Gene Price because, again, it's been a year. Like, can you believe that we've worked on so many other projects, right? I think you can attest to that. But I think this is probably one of the best projects that we've had an opportunity to be a part of. So I just got to start with you. What was it like when we put our minds together and decided to make this happen? You got to tell me what it was like last year.
It was a faith move. I think that's the best way I can describe it because we did something that none of us really did before. We did in-person shows, we did commercials, but a fully virtual streaming platform was crazy. And we started doing this, started kind of putting the brains together in basically the height of COVID. So you're talking about doing something for the first time brand new and hearing your story, understanding that you had a platform before and people didn't understand why you weren't live, but we got to understand why you weren't live, which they'll get to be reintroduced to in a couple of moments. But I think for me and the team, Brian, we both could say that it was a very humbling experience, but a lot of nerves because, you're doing a lot in a time where there was already so much anxiety that you're pressing through and you're going live. And it was a success. And, a year later, we're still here being able to say that Real Talk with Gene Price is live every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. sharp.
It's true. And you know what? But I have to say, I could not have done it without you and Brian. You can have a thought, you can have an idea, you can have creativity. And of course, we're so grateful to God who birthed that inside of us. But again, it could not have happened if you and Brian did not put the legs on it. And we had an awesome year. I have to tell you, it's been an awesome year. So I'm really grateful. I have to ask the questions about what was one of your favorite moments on Real Talk?
So I'm gonna pick two, and one's gonna be selfish.
Okay.
The cooking show might have been my favorite because we got food after, and I don't think people understand that Pastor Price can throw down, y'all. I'm gonna be honest with you. The man of God can cook. But me not being selfish, I think one of my favorite shows might still be Crouches. Mainly because I think that one thing that's great about the show is that the platform is great, the exposure is great, and God has done some tremendous things just with Real Talk and being on the Spot Living Network. But we got to see a lot of people actually get healing. And that was one of those shows where they needed that more than we needed to see it. And I think that that's something that they have lasting that goes beyond just a 15-minute platform. So for me, just seeing, the sisters embracing her, telling her that you are needed, you are valuable, I can't do this without you. And her, breaking down in tears of joy, and stuff like that. You can't script that.
And Zamar, it speaks to the vision. When we first came together on this particular project, remember it was about the message. And to your point, to take something that God gave us in a message and watch it, there be a manifestation or demonstration of it. I have to agree with you. That was probably one of my favorite shows. I have to agree. Yeah, that was a good one. So then let me ask you this. How have you seen the show evolve in the year that we've been working on this project?
I think the interesting about the show is that we knew that we wanted to be very authentic. It's real talk. We don't want to have conversations that are comfortable. And I think the more we did the show, the more we got comfortable being uncomfortable. We had shows with men that were incarcerated. We had shows with rape victims. We've had shows with people that were, of Christian faith and people that weren't of Christian faith. We weren't scared to go into topics that everyone's thinking about, but no one's talking about.
Oh, that's powerful. That's very powerful. You're absolutely correct. And I think oftentimes I always like to say that when you jump out there, it's a faith walk, but we can see that jumping out there, it really paid off. It paid off.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Yeah. So what do you think? What do you think as far as where we're going? And now in 2021, it's our first anniversary. Where do you think we're going from here?
I would like to put on the calendar in the next year to have at least one live show. I think it would be great as things are getting a little loose and, people are being able to get vaccinated and stay healthy, that we could really go out to the community and see, what are you guys really thinking live? But I think for us, the blueprint is just, we want to make sure that we're opening the door to conversations that need to be held, that for so long people haven't talked about. Even another show for me that was great was just talking about finances a lot and understanding generational wealth in the Black community and beyond it, that it doesn't have to be this thing where just a couple people break through. And I think the cool thing about our show is that we're really not trying to sell you anything. We're not trying to push agenda. We just want to get you this information so that you can give it to somebody else, so that you can experience a real breakthrough through a conversation. Not to be too deep, but one thing I love about Jesus Christ is that a lot of the biggest breakthroughs he had in his ministry came through parables and conversations. He wasn't preaching in the synagogue. He was just talking to people. I think that's what we do really well.
Yeah. The financial one was great. There was so many nuggets that people were struggling with, right, in different phases and stages of their lives. And so many points were hit in how to fare, especially to your point, right, Tamar? We were in COVID and people were trying to navigate and fare, and so many things were happening. So I agree. Again, that was a great show. That was a good show. Yeah.
And it's really cool because not only do we get information, we're very transparent with what's transpired. You talked about the fact that I think twice you had to build your financial background. And we're not ashamed to tell you that, things happen in our lives because things happen in our lives. And that to me is where you can have growth. When someone's not afraid to tell you where they fell and how they got back up, I can use that blueprint to get up. But if all you tell me is about your victories, I can't emulate your success.
I love that. You're right. You're absolutely right. And I'm very transparent, right? I'm the first person to tell on myself because I have nothing to hide. I mean, I feel like I'm a walking miracle anyway, so I definitely have nothing to hide.
100%. And it goes to the show. It's real talk.
Yeah.
If you're coming to watch this show and then you're coming to continue to watch the show, it's just being authentic, being true, and we're not here to, I mean, we're all part of the grace and mercy of God, and we're all living testimony that God can do even the more. And we're all testimony that we have a testimony, and we do overcome by the power of our testimony.
And a testimony we do have, right? Powerful
We
testimony.
do.
We do. We do. We do.
Oh, what a segue.
All right, what a segue. You go ahead. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So I think you want to share something about a testimony. You go ahead.
Yes. So this clip actually ended up going viral. It really was the foundation of how the show started. And it's interesting. A lot of people still really don't know your full story of what happened to you before the show started. So we actually do have the full clip for you guys to listen to. And I'm going to be interviewing Jean Price after this clip, which is a nice little turn.
Yeah.
So stay tuned, stay locked in. If you have any questions while the clip is going, please feel free to ask. And hear a couple of minutes of Lady Jean Price talking about some of her experiences.
All right.
I think sometimes people feel you're not supposed to be afraid. You know what I mean? Like it should never come up, but it does come up. The Bible says he hasn't given us a spirit of fear, but power, love, and a sound mind. And let this mind be in you, which is in Christ. I apply all of that. In my humanity, I had to identify with truth. And I had to be honest. I had to be honest with myself and say, Jean, you're afraid. And I had to really work that through. So the misconception could be, you're not supposed to be afraid, especially somebody like me, because I'm a co-pastor. You're not supposed to be afraid. Who said that? God didn't give it to me, but it didn't mean I wasn't going to feel it. I haven't been live since November of 2019. I felt the need to take a hiatus just because the holidays, and I just wanted to spend that time because I run all year round. And I took a break from November, December. January rolls in 2020, and it was my birthday. And it was interesting because the week before my birthday, I was rear-ended. Somebody hit me in the back of my car. And I thank God I walked out of that. I was, taken to the hospital, but I walked out. February 26th, which was a Wednesday, I was in Brooklyn at the beauty parlor, and I was fine. I went to work, I did what I do, and I was sitting in my hairstylist chair. She said, come on, Jean, let me just go ahead and curl you. And all of a sudden, I couldn't speak. The words were not kind of coming out right, and next thing you know, I collapsed to the floor. I had a massive stroke. So people haven't seen me live because I had a massive stroke. And the ambulance came to the beauty parlor. They rushed me. And it was so much going on that day, that the parts that I can remember, that all my numbers in my physical body just began to run out of whack. I'm not a person that has a diabetic problem. My sugar went crazy. My pressure shot to the roof. They rushed me to a hospital in Brooklyn. I don't even remember the name, to be honest. And they called my family right away. They said, listen, they rushed me, like you watch on TV, to I was in trauma. They said, we need to get a CAT scan of my brain right away. I have blood clot. They found a blood clot in my brain. And when they came back to deliver the news to us, of course, I know God hasn't given me the spirit of fear, and I get it. But in my humanity, I was truly afraid because it was moving so fast. And the doctors was like, okay, we got to get going because she's about to get, check out of here. And it said, we're going to take your wife right now and at midnight, which is, in the Bible. They took me to Mount Sinai Hospital in the city. They said they needed me to see a specialist, a neurointensivist, that can go in with this little tool and grab the clot. So at midnight, they transferred me to Mount Sinai Hospital. I got there, and when I got there, the doctors were kind of going back and forth, why is she here? They said they called here. When by the time I got there and they got me stable enough to have a conversation with us, they said, well, we can't help you because you're not supposed to be here. But how many know that when God ordains a thing, it's nothing anybody can do about it? So then the doctor comes and said, well, since you're here, and I know when those kinds of things come up, that just simply means that God was meant for me to be there. I remember they came and said to me, they said, we have to put you on medication because they did not remove the clot. And the reason they didn't remove the clot is because the clot is in a very serious area. That's what they said. So they put me on medication to get the clot to dissolve. So they walked in and they said, Ms. Price, how are you doing? I said, I feel great. Just like I'm talking to you now. I said, I feel great. They said, well, we're going to send you to step down. They sent me, I stepped down, I took me out of ICU and I was in a regular room. And then all of a sudden they came and said, Miss Price, you're doing so good. We're sending you home. Now I heard it, but I didn't hear it. 2 weeks later, I went back to see the specialist. And this is what he said. He said, Miss Price, look at the screen. He brought up my brain, but they did the CAT scan MRI. They showed the vessel that was in trouble in my head. He used the word, he said, this is rare. But your vessels saw that the one vessel was in trouble and they ran to go help the other vessel. So when the vessel went to help the other vessel, that's what saved my life. And I sat in his office and the tears. And I'm sorry. Only God can do that. It has been an interesting whirlwind, but in this time of being home, in this time of being able to reevaluate what life is really all about, I said, I can't go back to doing what I used to. I can't go back to, I love Wisdom Wednesday. But the Lord, I really felt in my heart, God was saying, no, it's more than that. It's more. It's a deeper message. Yes, I did a documentary, but it's deeper than that. So that's why the new show is called Real Talk. I have to say this, that there's a confidence that has now came out of me in what I went through, though. And I wouldn't have noticed that confidence was in it hadn't I gone through that life-changing experience. And that's what I want to share with somebody today. You might be facing the most challenging thing in your life, like I was. But I'm here to tell you, I'm here. Real Talk is here to hear your story and to help you get through it.
Wow. I still get goosebumps when I watch that.
I have to be totally transparent. I sat here and I cried. Again.
It's just something that you can't fabricate, you can't make up, and you're not supposed to be here. And people don't even realize that not even that long ago you went through another accident, and God still has you here.
It's funny, not funny, but it's interesting you brought that up tonight, Samar. The accident that I just had, what was it, 3 weeks ago, I think I told you, Samar, and the man hydroplaned and he hit my car. And it happened so fast, and I'm not a fast driver, and it was raining on June 22nd, which was last month. And as I was driving, we were going east, we were 5 minutes from the church, right? Tomorrow I wound up south. I was going east, but wound up south. I said what I have to say to you. I saw my car today. Well, I came on the show tonight, for those that are watching. I saw my car for the first time today from the accident. My car was totaled out. And I looked at that car. Okay, it just makes me want to cry. Like God was with me. They said, Miss Price, your car's totaled. We're paying it off. Go find another one. But it's not even about the car. It's to your point that, again, God spared my life. And the man hydroplaned, he was so shocked tomorrow that it happened so fast. He even told the cops, my fault, I hydroplaned, I lost control of the car. And the crazy part was it hit me. It hit the driver's side. It didn't hit Bishop, was on the passenger side. It hit me, and I walked away again. So, to your point, sir, to God be the glory. Happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary. You look back at these moments and, it makes sense why the show is the way it is, because it's birthed out of a very real place. And I think what's so true is that you don't look like it. Like, you really don't look like you've had a stroke. You don't look like you were in an accident or a car was totaled and you're walking, you're communicating, you don't have a straw in your mouth, you're not in a better state. So I get to interview you. So it's my time to be real talk with Samara Allen as I now get to interview you. This is the change.
Yes, sir.
Because ultimately, how do you feel after watching that first promo?
From an emotional perspective, I cried. Of course, I was not on live, and those you guys couldn't see me, but tears were coming out of my eyes because it really allowed me to see that the perspective that God gave me in the message of creating Real Talk with Gene Price was definitely from God, and it got his stamp of approval on it. And to look back then and to see where I am now, it just said to me like, wow, when God speaks a thing, so you wait to see it. The Bible teaches us that signs and wonders follow after a word is spoken. And that's what I felt like, Zamar. I felt like I was watching something come to pass based on a word. That's what it made me feel like.
So being able to take that all in, you've been able to do this for a year. So for you going into it, how did you feel with that first show?
And you and I have done many projects, right? It's so crazy that when we did this project, I was so nervous. Like, I'm not really nervous because, it's been years we've been working together with you, Brian. I was so nervous going into it. I think because there was a confidence that I did get once I got through the stroke, but I felt like the confidence was put to a test. Not confidence in myself, but confidence in what I felt God gave me. And the very first time we did the show, I was so excited because I feel like people believed in our vision and what God had given us to do. So it's exciting.
I think it's interesting how it ties in together because for those that got to see the promo, you talked about it's being okay to be afraid, just not staying there. Do you feel like those experiences that you had kind of prepared you for this now moment?
It did. My faith was tested, like beyond measure. And I was grateful that I was able to be transparent because I really was afraid. I was afraid that, maybe the clot, because remember, it was still in my head. And I have a testimony, by the way. It was still in my head. So every day after the stroke, I'm like, is that clot going to move? Because, I ran the risk of clotting and throwing a clot again. You understand? Or if the clot moved, you run the risk of it affecting another part of your brain. So it was interesting. It's just really interesting for me. Yeah.
Two more questions I'm done for you.
Yeah.
I just thought about it. Just popped in my head. A lot of people had to, self-quarantine during 2020. And interesting enough, you got to meet a lot of people from the comfort of your home. How did it feel building all these new relationships and meeting all these different people from so many different walks of life?
Oh my goodness, it was amazing. Because I love getting to know people. And I'm the kind of person where I'm very genuine. So I'm very genuine with people. And I hope I give off from myself that people are loud and they can feel that they can be genuine with me. And that's what I felt like I got. Someone really did. I felt like it was very reciprocal. I met so many amazing people, like just amazing people I never met, people you guys have introduced me to, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I'll be writing to you in the chat. I just love them. I always write something. So I think a lot of great relationships came out of all of it. It really did.
So I have one final question. This is not Real Talk with Samara Allen, but I just wanted to know, going into the second year, what are you looking forward to?
Oh, I really am looking forward to the message being greater than it is now. Because I can see us going into areas that we didn't touch in the first year, but we're going to touch in the second year. Because I think people can see that we're relevant. I think what makes it so great, even when you're dealing with salvation, is that we're not so far off that we can't be touched or reached. And you understand what I mean? So I think having a greater awareness that it's going to be even greater in season number 2. But before you stop your question, I just want to give you a testimony to what you said earlier. I went to the doctor last week It was the first MRI I've had since the stroke. They can't find a trace of the stroke.
What?
Just went to the doctor.
Come on, God,
I
Jesus.
promise you, I went to the doctor Monday. First MRI since the stroke, no trace. In fact, I have a report. I can even hold it up, literally, that said negative. Literally, everything's negative. Promise you. I promise you. So I'm just saying, like, it was just, this was ordained. This was ordained for us to do.
Wow. That's a word. We could preach a sermon and raise an offering right there. The amazing thing is that I am not the only guest on the show today. We have two also awesome women that are coming in that were previous guests that will say a little bit about how the experience was when they were live, but also talk about, what are some new things they're going into and have a little bit of a real talk in a small span. So we'll be right back at this commercial break. I'm Zamar Allen. I am not your host because this is Real Talk with Gene Price. Remember, that way, with Gene Price.
Next week on Real Talk with Gene Price.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Gene Price. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in tonight. I appreciate your support.
It's always important to look and see what's ahead, but it's also important to remember what's behind you. Remember the good moments. Remember the tough lessons. Remember the disappointments. Remember the victories. Remember the people who helped build you up. Remember the moments that shaped your life. Remember your past and run to your future. A lot has happened over the last 365 days, and we're excited to see what's going to happen in the next 365 days.
In college, I just had really bad horror stories. A lot of times, the things that we create are birthed out of desperation or birthed out of this painful place. And that's what happened to me. I would get my hair done, I would get a great stylist and it would look good for the first day. And I would go to school, a predominantly white school, and they don't understand, natural hair. They don't understand weaves. They don't understand, how to really do that. They would try their best. And, I would just 1 week later look like a bird's nest in the back. And I was like, man, there has to be better hair than this. As a college student, I want to focus on my studies. And I got to walk around with this bird's nest for, I don't know how, a whole part of a semester. God, this can't be life. And I think the straw that really broke the camel's back was when I was always a hard worker. So I would have like 2 or 3 jobs at a time and go to school. And I had got my hair, my bundles or my hair wet. And I had a white turtleneck on. And when it got wet, it was this green stuff that was like dripping out of my hair. And I said, well, what is this? And it was all over my white, turtleneck. And I said, I worked so hard, my JCPenney job, my FYE job, Macy's. I was doing all of this just to have garbage in my hair. And I said, God, this cannot be life. And I worked on the vision for a while. And it was 2017 when I finally birthed it. And I said, I'm just going to do it. I don't have capital. I don't have, investors. I don't have a lot of money, but I'm just going to go forth. And since then, it's been an amazing journey. And the part of it that I love so much is the mentorship that was birthed out of it. So I wanted to have so many aspects. Like our mission is to provide quality hair and empower women. Because when you look good, like you feel good.
Yeah. It's really, it's true. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's a direct impact sometimes. And so sometimes just that confidence of knowing that you don't have a ball in the back of your head. So again, the mission is to really empower women, quality extensions, but a part of that empowerment is resources, providing education, a platform that talks about things that impact Black women. So like on my blog, that's the platform that I use. I try to integrate it with Instagram, but we talk about women's health, breast cancer. You know, my mom is a breast cancer survivor. You know, it runs in our family. We talk about Breonna Taylor. We talk about things that impact women.
Welcome back to Real Talk. Listen, I hope you enjoyed that interview, and I am excited to have my guest come on the show. She's been on the show before, and it was such a great topic. Help me welcome Ray Mitchell to the show, Pastor Ray Mitchell to the show.
Hello.
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 How are you?
I'm doing good.
Thank you for coming back on Real Talk. Thank you so much. What have you been up to?
Woo, quite a few things. Ministry, work, businesses, the same rotation.
Same rotation. Okay, so I have to ask the question. Can you kind of tell me what your experience was like when you were on the show?
I will say it was very empowering, you know, to be able to sit down. I know we're virtual, you know, in two different places, but just to be able to sit down on a platform with another woman who's in business, who's in ministry, who's, you know, has such a testimony. I empowered is really the word that comes to mind. You know, even hearing your testimony again, you know, for the second time, I even got emotional backstage. I was like, wow, like I'm here. I'm a guest here, me. You know, so it just made me want to do more. Like since then, I've written more blogs. I went a little harder with my mentorship, just adding more value to what I'm doing as far as the business at whole.
Wow. So how do you balance it, Regine? You do so much as an entrepreneur, as a pastor. You do a lot. So how do you, I know how I try to balance, but how do you balance?
To be honest, I can't equally balance everything.
Right.
I used to try to do that. And at the end of the day, I used to find that I wasn't really making impact. Like I was barely chipping the ice on everything that I was trying to do. So, you know, I'll be doing one thing for 2 hours, then 2 hours business, 2 hours ministry, 2 hours, you know, and it was just like I was barely chipping away at the ice. And so what I realized for me, for my life, with all the things that I have going on, is really talking to God. Like, okay, God, there's a lot of things you place at my feet, at my hands. Show me what you want me to focus on. You know, what season is this for? What should I really be looking at? And then how, you know, am I supposed to just be researching? Is it just strategy building time? Is it planning time, preparing time? Is it time to straight up just execute? And I really have to seek God in seasons where I feel like, okay, like I'm overwhelmed. I'm doing 1,000 things and there's no results. There's no impact. So I can't, you know, I wouldn't say that I really equally balance everything. I just find seasons of where I focus on certain things, and I truly trust God to take care of the things that I'm not putting all of my, I guess, into at the moment.
Right, right. I love that because, first of all, that's the best. That's how I find it works for me too. When I ask God those questions, and I know Scripture is true when it says the steps of a good man are ordered by God. I find, to your point, Regine, they really are ordered. Like I could find myself, and to your point, we have a lot going on. But when I put my focus in on asking the question of the how, and I already know the why, God teaches me how to do it. And I love that. That was very powerful about what you said. I love that. That was good. So let me ask you, if you had to go back, right, 10 years of your life, what would you say would be your greatest part of where you are right now? How did it help you get to where you are?
Ooh, 10 years ago. So that's
10 years ago.
2011. I just was graduating college.
Okay.
And my mistake, I would say back then, or little did I know, you know, if I could talk to my younger self, was that I didn't really know Christ. Like I've been to church, you know, but I didn't really know God. Like I didn't have that relationship. But I always had the curiosity to know God. But so at that time, 2011, you know, I'm transitioning from being a college student, and it's like I'm going into the work realm, the careerist side of me. I've always wanted to do things like hair and go into beauty, but the world said, society said, there's no money in that. You know, entrepreneurship wasn't highlighted the way that it was. We didn't have all these booming social media platforms. So I put a lot of my faith into this piece of paper, which was my degree.
Mm-hmm.
A lot. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna get a great job. I'm gonna start my life. Like, I had it all planned out.
Right.
And I have more faith in this piece of paper than I did in God, you know? And so it's funny, before I started, before I left college, or even started college, I was working at JCPenney, and I was making like $7.25 an hour. And then when I graduated from college after 5 years, and I was ready to go into the real world, it took me months and months and months to find a job. So I graduated in May, and then October, I was just like, you know what? I just need a job. You know, I got to do something. And so I went back to the same place, JCPenney, that I left before I went to college, and I was making $7.75 an hour. And it was crazy because I was just so confused, like, what's happening? You know, and I didn't have the relationship where I could turn to God, like, God, you know, like you said, you know, it was more so, in this piece of paper. And so if I could really go back 10 years, I would more so, I wish I could have been able to increase my faith and then couple it with the work of going to school, you know, to really let God lead me. Because I believe he would have opened the doors instead of me. I was on Craigslist, was a thing at the time. So I was on Craigslist for hours, like, let me get a job. So it took me a long time to get my feet into the door. You know, now, you know, I climbed my way up. I'm in HR, I'm in administration, but it took so much time. You know, I went back to school, pursued a master's degree. So yeah, a lot happened in those 10 years.
Well, saying all of that, because you brought up such a great point in your transitioning period. If the rise of millennials, right? Everybody seems like it's starting businesses. What advice would you give them?
Ooh, it's funny because social media will make it seem like entrepreneurship is so easy, you know, like, yeah, everybody can be an entrepreneur, but it's not for the faint at heart. Some people really are meant to be careerists. Some people are truly meant to be working, and you're still going to make a difference in a 9 to 5, a 10 to 6. It's okay. But entrepreneurship, if you don't put the work in, your check, your income is going to directly reflect it. You know, especially for somebody who was like me, who did not have access to capital, no angel investors, no money to pull out of somewhere to truly put in the way that a business should really start. A lot of people are starting with just, you know, using money from their paycheck, and then they're building it over time. It's tough. It's really, really hard. And to staying consistent, that's what advice I would give to a young entrepreneur. The first year, you're going to be like, well, where is it? Sometimes it does take off, you know, sometimes it doesn't, but staying consistent, whether it does or it doesn't. Whether it does or it doesn't. Consistency, you know, my pastor said this one time, consistency is a major part of your brand. People think that it's your logo and your colors and, you know, how it just looks aesthetically, but it's like how often you're putting out, you know, content, and not just on social media. Like, there's times where I pause on my social media, and there's a direct impact to my brand, to my business, to how many people. Like, I look at analytics on my my store all the time. Where they clicking, where they coming from, you know, what avenue, what's drawing them in as far as traffic. And the less you post, the less that income is. And that's just what it is.
That is true.
Yeah.
That is so true. Wow. I just want to thank you again for sharing that. That was the advice to give was powerful. And we salute you, and know here on Real Talk, we know you're family to us. So we're excited about what's going on in your life. We want you to continue to do what you do. And of course, we want you to come back and visit us at Real Talk. Listen to my viewing audience. They're chiming in. Kurt Estes wrote, "This is good." Shawana Smith wrote, "Yes, right." People write, Matthew wrote, "Okay." And I love it. It's so, so good to have people chiming in. So we invite you to come back again, but we will see you the next time you come on Real Talk with Jean Price. We're going to take a commercial break, and we have another guest that's going to join us. Thank you again for your support. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
Bye.
if you take relationships, husband and wives, or marital relationships, because of the pandemic, people had to now deal with each other or deal with things they didn't have to deal before. Case in point, you're home all the time. You might have to deal with the pet peeves that bother you, but I found out that was a time that, you got it, the communication was challenged. With so many different challenges that married couples face. Some people wind up being on unemployment. So those financial woes became a tension in some relationships, and other things, just dealing with sexual abuse. If somebody, say there was a child being sexually abused, I found out that children, because of the pandemic, were home with the perpetrator. And I found out that was such a test for people having to get through that. And the reason it kind of falls under the guidelines of love is because then that other parent had to deal with what was going on with that child. So it was a whole lot of things then going on in relationships during the pandemic. Next week on Real Talk with Jean Price.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in tonight. I appreciate your support.
It's always important to look and see what's ahead, but it's also important to remember what's behind you. Remember the good moments. Remember the tough lessons. Remember the disappointments. Remember the victories. Remember the people who helped build you up. Remember the moments that shaped your life. Remember your past and run to your future. A lot has happened over the last 365 days, and we're excited to see what's going to happen in the next 365 days.
Welcome back to Real Talk, and this is our anniversary and part 1, and we are celebrating with previous guests that came on the show, and we've invited a couple of them back, and we are dialoguing about what it's been like to be on Real Talk. So I want to take this time to welcome my next guest. I'm going to ask Dr. Tay to come on in and chime in, and we're going to see what she has to say. Dr. Tay, how are you?
Hi, Lady Price. It's so good to be back. How are you?
I am good. I am so glad to see you. Thank
Likewise.
you so much. I have to ask you, Dr. Tay, what was your experience like when you were on Real Talk?
It was definitely eye-opening. It was probably one of my first virtual appearances during COVID. So like a lot of things that I would have been doing, like panels and things like that, they became virtual, like everything else. And you made the space very warm and very safe to just share, because we were talking about some heavy things. We were talking about trauma. We were talking about the trauma of this pandemic and all of that. So it was definitely a safe space.
Wow. We often talk about, I remember when you were on the show, but we often talk about mental health. How do you feel in your profession? How do we help people? Okay, we talk about the pandemic. Just in general, it's so much going on, Dr. Tay, with mental health. So how do we help people?
That's probably an entire show, right? The answer that I often give my students as a professor is it depends, because there's so many factors that go into it. What population are you striving to help? How are you endeavoring to help them? What are the outcomes that you're looking for as far as mental health is concerned? Because mental health is a very broad concept, a very broad field. And what's going to help a middle-aged white man who just went through a divorce is going to be very different from what helps a 13-year-old young girl in Spanish Harlem. You know what I mean? So it's good to have the goal and the desire to help people, but we really have to be mindful of what we want those outcomes to be.
Wow, that was powerful. That really was. So let me ask you, when you hear the phrase, it's okay not to be okay, how does that resonate with you?
It's true. It's true. And I also speak from the perspective of a mental health provider who's also human, which all of us are. But it's okay to not be okay. And I think that sometimes mental health providers will think, we have to tuck our capes in when we are helping other people. But it's really important. Can you hear that? I'm so sorry. It's really important that people realize that you can be okay. You can not be okay, but still be you. Like, it's all right to go through the process. It's okay to have these ebbs and flows. Like, being a mental health professional doesn't mean that you're a superhero. Doesn't mean that you're perfect. Doesn't mean that you know everything. So it's really important, I think, especially as first responders and servant leaders and mental health professionals, people who have been at the front lines, not just during the pandemic, but overall, it's important that we realize that we need help too.
Yeah, it's true. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Dr. Tate.
Yeah, we need help too, and it's okay for us to admit it, and it's even better for us to pursue the help that we need.
I love that. And that's a good segue, Dr. Tate, because I wanted to talk about, since you mentioned first responders, it was so many traumatic experiences, if I can say that with you as a professional, that so many people went through. And like yourself, were you part of that front line? And when I say the front line, I'm talking about the front line to help people get through the depression, the anxiety. It was so much going on. Can you kind of share a little bit about that experience with us?
Well, funny story. When we first went remote, I work for the City University of New York. We received an email from the then president stating that we were essential staff and we had to be in the building. And the union pushed back, we meaning those who work for the counseling center. And we pushed back and we said that we can affect change from home in our pajamas. So I think that we were essential staff, but we weren't essential staff who were on the front lines, like on the literal geographic front lines. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I absolutely say that mental health professionals are on the front lines, even though we were doing, conducting telehealth. We were on the front lines because people, like you said, during the pandemic, we were realizing things that we didn't know before. Like, I think you mentioned in one of the recaps, like, husbands were realizing, like, oh my goodness, she smacks when she eats and I can't stand that. But like, we didn't know that because we weren't in the house so much. We were realizing that, what the teacher is saying about my children that's accurate. And it was a lot to handle, it was a lot to bear, it was a lot to take in. And where were people going? People were going to mental health professionals. People who wouldn't ordinarily seek therapy were seeking therapy because it was safe. It was safe because you can do it in the comfort of your own home. You don't have to go into an office and people see that you're going into a place that says psychotherapy and all of that. You can get on your phone. So mental health professionals absolutely on the front lines. Me personally, as a psychologist in a college, absolutely. You had so many students on the surface, they were saying, well, I didn't sign up for online classes. But on the bottom, underneath the surface, it was, I'm at home with the very same people who are driving me to need therapy. Under the surface, it's, I'm left with my thoughts and my emotions. I don't have the opportunity to go into the building. A lot of my students told me that going to their school was a coping technique for them. Some of them returned to school to get out of the houses that they were in. So I was frontline in that capacity, seeing students, but not only seeing students, but helping to manage crisis situations. Can you imagine having to have someone hospitalized, but you can't see or touch them? Having to really pool resources.
That's hard.
Okay, well, how am I going to contact EMS? How am I going to know that their location is really their location? And using the right platforms so that there's like there was so many pieces. So I was involved in that piece. But then from the ministry perspective, I was frontline because, again, a lot of people were coming to terms, maybe not coming to terms, but they were realizing things that they hadn't noticed before. So, Pastor had started our counseling ministry the year prior, I believe. And people were submitting their counseling inquiry forms. Like, I need to talk about this. I need to talk about that. And some of the things that I heard while counseling for the church were probably heavier on my shoulders than some of the things that I heard at the school.
And
Because
I didn't know that
and
way.
we
Yeah.
think that, church is, we say, oh, church is a hospital or whatever, but we automatically think that because people are going to church that they're automatically healed.
Right.
God is able to do microwave healing,
Right.
but that's not always how it's going to be, because sometimes, and I say most times, the blessing and the deliverance is going to come through the process. Therapy is a process. Like, I've had students come to the intake and then they don't show back up because they think they're fine. Like, oh, I'm good, because they've dumped.
Right.
They open the lid off the pot and they let that steam out.
Mm-hmm.
And then I see them in a couple of months.
Wow.
Because they didn't go through the process.
Right. So then let me ask you, Dr. Tay, with all that, as a frontliner, you're in ministry, you're helping so many people. Were there times that you needed help in light of everything that was going on?
Absolutely. And I can emphatically say that. Absolutely. At the beginning of the pandemic was like in March. Yes. There was one Friday where I was in the building, and the next Monday I was remote. And I have not been in my building. I've driven past my building, but I haven't been in my building since.
Okay.
And shortly after we went to distance learning and remote counseling, I realized that I was having a meltdown. I was having a full-blown meltdown. There were some other things going on in my personal life, and my reaction was like, it was strong. I'll just say this. Our executive pastor and his wife, well, executive pastors, they had to come find me. They had to find me because people were reaching out to him saying that we're concerned about Tay. I wasn't Dr. Tay at that point. I wasn't Pastor Tay. I wasn't Professor Tay. I was Tay. Right. And I realized that my office was my safe haven. My office was not so much safe haven, but more so where I found solace. So, I could go into my office, take off my coat, and pray. Turn on the mood lighting, turn on the lamps, turn off the fluorescent lights. I didn't have that. So it was like it was ripped from me in moments, and I didn't know how to deal. But it's therapy and self-reflection that helped me to realize that. I realized why I was having this strong reaction. Did it excuse any behaviors? No.
Right.
But and that's one thing that I often say to people. My job as a psychologist is not to help you excuse your behavior, but to explain your behavior. Because if you can explain it, then you're better equipped to change it. So, I was in therapy. I've been in therapy for a while because people who help people need help too, right?
Right.
But I definitely needed it through, like, at the beginning. And not only did I have that breakdown because my place of solace was ripped from me, but I also had COVID. Oh, wow. But I didn't know it. See, I thought I had it. Okay. But at that point, very early on, it was about the shortness of breath.
Yes.
And the shortness of breath. I was like, and fever, right? So I had the low grade, I had the fever, but I didn't have the shortness of breath. So I'm like, okay, it's just the flu.
Right.
So I'm going on about my business. I did quarantine. Well, as much as a 5 and 7-year-old will let you quarantine.
Right.
Not at all. But, I did quarantine just in case. And after my symptoms had resolved, I had a taste for soul food. I know this has nothing to do with mental health, but I finally got it and I couldn't taste it. Wow. And I was just like, let me Google and see if this is a symptom. And there were some preliminary stage research studies that suggested that loss of smell and taste was a symptom of COVID in a certain cohort of people.
Yes.
So I called and requested the test. And, I guess I wasn't high risk enough because they didn't call me for a test until a month after the onset of my symptoms. And I told the woman, I was just like, well, I'm feeling better now. And I know that there's a shortage of tests. So, and she was just like, oh, well, a lot of people who were asymptomatic have passed. I'm like, your bedside manner needs help. So I went to get the test and I got my results while I was leading a clinical case conference for work. And I was positive. And, in addition to my meltdown at the beginning,
yes,
that was a really difficult time for me because I honestly felt guilty. Because I was putting the two people in my house who are high risk at risk, even though I wasn't aware of it.
I understand. Yeah.
I wasn't aware of it, but I could have put them in danger. My son has asthma. My grandmother has COPD, and a number of other health issues. So I had to deal with guilt, even though it wasn't well founded. It didn't make sense, but it's still something I had to deal with. So yeah, I'm a psychologist and I can get on live and I can tell you how to do this and change your thinking and thinking and all of that. But sometimes we need someone to help us apply it.
That's right.
And I'll be the first person to say that I am not perfect. I go through things just like everybody else goes through things as a psychologist, as a pastor. But I think what makes a difference between people who get help and people who don't is the courage and the willingness to get the help.
That's right. Your transparency is absolutely amazing. And for those people are chiming in, Dr. Tay, Yolanda's saying, yes, that's true. And Shawana Smith chimed in and said the same thing happened to her. She was asymptomatic. And, I was asymptomatic as well. So I had just had the stroke, came home. My husband was full blown. We thought we would literally going to lose him. And I came up with COVID. So I was struggling with the stroke and COVID and him.
My God.
All at the same time. But I'm so grateful for your transparency in saying that, because you bringing yourself and making it relevant allows everybody to understand to me. I'm a transparent person. I stand.
That's one thing I love about you.
I love that. I'm so grateful that you shared that, because it shows people that even people that are strong and gifted and talented and knowledgeable, we all need help as well. So to my viewing audience, Dr. Tay, can you just say, we have about 30 seconds left in the show. Can you just say something to encourage the viewing audience? Because you got to stay tuned, because Dr. Tay is amazing. She's absolutely amazing. So can you say something to them for 30 seconds before we close the show?
Well, we started off talking about it's okay to not be okay. And, we say doctor's orders. The doctor says that it's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay in that. So if you find that you are not okay, I encourage you to seek help. And help isn't always going to be with your friends, with your family members. Sometimes help is going to be with your pastor. And if your pastor isn't licensed in counseling or something like that, then sometimes you need to go to that level 3 coping technique and get professional help. And it's okay. It doesn't make you lesser of a person. It doesn't make you less of a believer. I have a t-shirt that says, I love Jesus and my therapist, because you can do both at the same time. But that's another soapbox. It's okay to not be okay. It's just not okay to stay there. Get the help you need. Develop your support. They can see your hand, sweetheart. The transparency, right?
I love it.
Just don't stay there. There's a phrase that says, if you make your bed, you lay in it. Nobody said to get comfortable. Pull the covers up. And even if you didn't make the bed, don't get comfortable. Turn on Netflix.
Right.
You can be down, but don't stay down. You can go through, but go through it. Don't stay in the midst of it.
That's right.
And sometimes it's going to take therapy to help you get through to that other side.
I want to thank my viewing audience. Thank you so much, Dr. Tay. Thank you, Regine, for joining us. And of course, thank you to Zamar. He's behind the scenes, but today he was in front of the scenes today. I just want to thank you all for listening for this wonderful part 1 of an anniversary recap. But you guys got to stay tuned and come back next week, because part 2 of this is going to be up. We'll see you the next time on Real Talk with Jean Price. Bye-bye.
Next week on Real Talk with Jean Price.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me tonight on Real Talk with Jean Price. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming in tonight. I appreciate your support.
It's always important to look and see what's ahead, but it's also important to remember what's behind you. Remember the good moments. Remember the tough lessons. Remember the disappointments. Remember the victories. Remember the people who helped build you up. Remember the moments that shaped your life. Remember your past and run to your future. A lot has happened over the last 365 days. We're excited to see what's going to happen in the next 365.